Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to what is going to be another jam-packed live stream. We already have 170 of you in here across multiple platforms. We are live on YouTube, Twitter, or now known as X, and of course, Twitch. And this was not a planned live stream. However, given the events that have just unfolded today, we thought it was important to do one. And of course, we are going to be talking about Iran declaring war against Israel. I'm getting a bit of deja vu. We have lived through something similar to this year already. We're going to be talking about October. We're off to a great start already, aren't we? We're going to be really sort of breaking down everything that is currently taking place and, of course, taking a look at the markets. So the first place for me to start, when Moon, we'll be answering that, don't worry, is with the crypto chart. So we're going to be taking a look at just how bad it is. What's the kind of damage report? We'll be doing this in a lot more detail when we actually dive over to Bitcoin's charts. We're going to be looking at things like Lockheed Martin, which is, of course, a wartime stock. Very interesting. I'll just flick over to that very quickly before we get into this all, because this has been doing rather well, and certainly going into what's taking place today, it's been doing rather well. We're seeing oil spike end on the back end of this. We're seeing gold up. We're going to be talking about how Bitcoin also typically reacts in regards to geopolitical events. BlackRock did a report looking at Bitcoin being a unique diversifier. And of course, they cover a number of times where Bitcoin was involved, or not involved, I shouldn't say, but a partaker in downside due to geopolitical events. And ultimately, we're going to look at the sort of returns that it gave after them. So should you be buying the dip? We'll be answering some of these questions, not to trivialize the situation that is at hand, because it is a serious one and people are losing their lives, and there's nothing funny, there's nothing humorous about that. There's only remorse and sorrow that can come on the back end of that. So not to sort of trivialize the situation at all as we look at the markets in the face of what is a very real and scary situation for many individuals out there. But let's get on with the live stream, guys. And let's start by taking a look at where the cryptocurrency market is today. We've got Bitcoin down only 2.1% in the past 24 hours. Now, if this was World War III, would Bitcoin be down 2.1%? We'll look at the stock market. We're going to do a number of things throughout this live stream. We've got Ethereum down 3.4%. Of course, Tether being a stable coin is largely where it was. BNB down 3.6% today. Solana down 5%. XRP down 3.8%. Lido stake ETH, which is just Ethereum, down the same as Ethereum. Dogecoin down a whopping 9%. Now, memes have been mooning recently, which is symptomatic of the risk-on environment that we are now in. It's very much been signaled by the Federal Reserve. And altcoins, or certainly meme coins, altcoins generally, but meme coins are certainly showing their appetite for the risk-on environment that we're in, or kind of showing you that it is a risk-on environment. Of course, today, there's a pullback. It's interesting because the dollar was strong actually going into this evening. We've got Toncoin down 8.1%. We've got Tron holding up rather strong at 1% down today. Cardano down 6%. AVAX, Avalanche down 7.2%. We've got Shiba Sheeb down 8%. Chainlink down 6%. Bitcoin Cash 5%. Polkadot 7%. Near down 10%, a whopping 10%. I was actually just before this listening to a talk that was actually given by Near in regards to AI. They've become a massively focused AI project. We think that crypto and AI are this kind of match made in heaven. Sui is down 4%, Uniswap 6%, Litecoin, Pepe down 5%. This isn't kind of black swan event price action that we're seeing. Now, it's certainly not pretty by any stretch of the imagination. However, it's not World War III kind of status. And if you look at coins over the past 30 days, the vast majority, in fact, pretty much everything barring Tron, Litecoin, Casper, surprised with that, Polygon, Monero are down in the top 50. The rest are up on the 30-day. And I think when we dive over to the charts and we really look at what is taking place today and put it into perspective, there's always panic. When you deal with a market that moves 7% in a couple of hours. That is scary. You know, we've often said that traditional risk management, you need to allow for nuance when you relate to the cryptocurrency market space, because it's very hard to stick to traditional risk profiling in regards to crypto. It just, a lot of it doesn't quite apply. You know, if you look at your sort of 2% stop loss and all the other kind of traditional methods that are used when it comes to trading the crypto space, they kind of get somewhat thrown out the window. You can apply risk management in regards to trend following. We've just released our when to sell course in regards to following a trend. And our when to sell course is very much based on when the trend is being invalidated is usually not such a bad time to get out. Not always, but 9 times out of 10, that is the case. So the market generally is down. A great start to October. It is the 1st of October today. We thought September was going to be a horrific one. However, September, let's look at September in regards to a monthly close. And let's actually dive over to the crypto total market cap. Let's put it on a monthly candle and see just what that candle looks like. It is a red one, however, not significantly. So for the month of September, how much are we down on the monthly candle? Still people out there that are unfamiliar with Japanese candlesticks. You get a red candle, of course, if it closed lower than what it opened, but Bitcoin only down around about 4%. So September being very much true to fashion. Will October on the back end of today be very much true to fashion? We think it will. We're going to dive into all of that when we start to cover the market more broadly. There's loads of you in here now, guys. Likes and comments are appreciated. Again, this was not a planned live stream, but given the news, given the kind of market reaction, it's very sudden, isn't it? And that's because of the low interest in crypto. Not many people are interested in the cryptocurrency markets whatsoever. So when you get a sell event and there's not a lot of orders in the order books, it causes this kind of drop. There's a real over leveraging when it comes to crypto. And ultimately, every time we get some sort of a news-driven event, we see that flush out of leverage. We'll talk about that in regards to BlackRock's report, where they look at Bitcoin as a unique diversifier. And what they essentially identify is Bitcoin is more of a risk-off asset than a risk-on asset, although it moves with risk-on. They would argue perhaps that is a short-term correlation that we're going to see detach, and actually that Bitcoin was meant for events like what we're seeing today. Does that mean, however, the cryptocurrency space at large is more of a risk-off asset? Well, I think a lot of the cryptocurrencies out there don't have the same principles behind them as BTC. You know, they probably would be more synced to risk on. They're not trying to be an alternative monetary system. You know, if you look at gold today, gold doing very well on the back end of all this. Oil doing well, of course, Lockheed Martin, and the risk sector generally getting hit. We'll talk about that in far, far more detail. What I want to do now that we've looked at the market and we've kind of, I guess, synthesized. And let's just go over to the Bitcoin chart once more. We'll do more work on this, guys. Don't worry. We'll look at the stock market more broadly and markets more broadly. Look at Bitcoin's daily candle. Actually, yesterday's candle was a worse candle than today, given the news that we are currently experiencing. You can see, according to TradingView, Bitcoin down 2.3%. It's kind of just a normal day in the cryptocurrency markets, despite the news that we're about to now cover. And certainly Bitcoin, on a zoomed out view, a daily chart, you guys know, and we'll get into all of this in this live stream. This is just a broadening pullback, a broadening descending wedge. You're ultimately going to make your way, we believe, to the upside of it, get to 84K, 130K, 151K, and then eventually potentially 309. That could be our bull market top. Ultimately, this uptrend is very much intact. And when you take that zoomed out approach, it really does put things into perspective. It's horrific what's taking place. There's always two sides to a story. I really want to put that view forward. I'm a big fan. I'm a big lover of history, and I've spent a lot of time looking into history generally. And what you'll find is, you know, history is always wrote by the victor, and there's a skewing of it that comes on the back end of that. But we don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. Let's cover what, of course, is taking place today. And it is a horrible situation. Whenever there's innocent people on both sides that are getting killed in regards to some conflict, it is a sad, sad day. And we're seeing the escalation of one of those conflicts today, ladies and gentlemen. And this, of course, is coming out in the markets. Iran launches missile attacks on Israel for allegedly killing Hezbollah leader general. Now, there's been massive tensions with, of course, Iran generally and the West, Iran and Israel. And we're seeing an escalation of this. And this is from Mario. Iran, we are in a state of war. Iran's Minister of Information. The country has entered a state of war, and any content in favor of the enemy and weakening the country, the government, the army, and the army is considered treason. And the managers of the channels and groups are warned to be published this content. Source government. Very interesting. There's lots of images coming out. Twitter is both the best and the worst place for information, ladies and gentlemen. It truly is. You get some amazing things on Twitter. You also get some really bad things. There's a lot of misinformation on Twitter. I know they introduced the community notes, but we're still seeing that. There are reports that some of this footage is actually from old invasions. We know that actually Iran earlier this year went and did a similar thing in regards to sent missiles over to Israel in retaliation. Of course, very much the same story today playing out. The markets reacted pretty awfully. I think it was on a Friday the last time Iran attacked Israel. We're going to try and stay, not really get into it too much, guys, because, you know, again, there's always two sides to a story. We're not really here to portray both sides. What we're here to do is tell you the news that's taking place today and how it's affecting the markets, look at the markets, look at the standing of the markets and where we're heading. So I do apologize. We're not a geopolitical channel. You know, and we really want to stay that way. We don't want to, of course, I have my own opinions on the whole situation. But what we're really going to do is report what we're getting told and sort of leave it from there and look at how the markets are reacting. So we're getting a lot of imaging. There's been lots of individuals talking about how some of this is older footage, but we are getting a lot of footage on Twitter. I think Mario also posting some footage of his own in regards to the actual missiles sort of entering or approaching Israel. There was news, of course, this week in regards to Israel forces in Lebanon. So Israel forces launched ground offensive in Lebanon as markets fear escalation. It's interesting. I looked at the dollar today and I thought, why is that rallying? Obviously went over to Forex Factory. The news that we're watching out for this week is, of course, non-farm payroll. We want to see a de-escalation. We're talking about escalation. We want to see a de-escalation in the increase in unemployment. Whether we're going to see that or not is to be seen. There's likely going to be volatility on the back end of that. There's no real news from a sort of macroeconomic point of view. Of course, geopolitical news is really what's driving this. But in regards to macroeconomic news, there was no news that sort of would have driven the dollar strength other than perhaps some inkling that this was going to happen. It's very interesting. You know, we truly believe markets are the footprints in the sands and ultimately they can predict events. And when we go and look at the likes of Lockheed Martin, it's very interesting, this, isn't it? Which is a government industrial complex, military-based stock. Look at how well this has been doing. Interesting. As if they knew, or as if the markets knew that something was going to happen. And why the markets are predictive is because people are privy to information and money is the root of all evil. Or the real phrase there is the love of money is the root of all evil. Money itself is, of course, an object or objective, I should say. And it's the love of it that's the root of all evil. And this ultimately is why we're seeing, we see things play out in the charts before they actually play out. And they can be quite predictive. So that dollar strength coming in the back end of all of this or pre all of this. And of course, Lockheed Martin has really been doing rather well. This is a weekly time frame. You can see this weekly candle over here was towards back in July going into September. And look at it since. You know, the markets probably knew something was coming. But the main news today really is Iran have essentially bombed Israel once again or sent missiles into Israel, fired missiles into Israel once again for retaliation and are essentially claiming, declaring war or a state of war, if you will. So it's a real escalation. Are we going to see a de-escalation on the back end of this? It's all still to be seen. The real fears are, certainly in regards to that region, it's like a tinderbox. I mean, it really, really is in regards to other nations that may get pulled in on the back end of it all. And that's something that we certainly don't want to see. certainly given the kind of tensions that already exist in the world. And I think there's always tensions, but certainly, it's kind of like only one thing really needs to go wrong for things to really truly go wrong. And we've been in that kind of a state, I think, for a while now. And I think Israel and the Middle East is going to be a key player in regards to what's to come and the SHIT potentially hitting the fan. But we'll address that when we need to. We have seen something similar to this, maybe not to the same degree, earlier this year. And ultimately, we're hoping for a de-escalation of it. And if we get that de-escalation, this is really interesting because this is a report from BlackRock. Now, we looked at this report. It's a great, great report because in this report, BlackRock are essentially putting forward the idea that Bitcoin is a risk-off investment, not risk-on. So we know, we do a lot of looking at this specifically here on the channel, that Bitcoin is likely going to do very well in a risk-on environment. If you look at Bitcoin, it is the most correlated asset in regards to global liquidity. Lynn Alden did a great report on that not so long ago. Now, BlackRock are essentially saying the opposite. They're saying, okay, there are periods where it's correlated and it will move in sync. We'll show you them in regards to the report that they highlight. But generally, the principles behind Bitcoin, the unique properties of Bitcoin, it is a risk-off asset. So Bitcoin has exhibited a low historical correlation with US equities, with periods of dislocation. However, there are periods of it doing the same thing. But generally, what they're highlighting here is that they think over the past 6 months, certainly, and there has been a divergence in regards to Bitcoin and risk generally. And I think that's because, let's put Bitcoin on and let's put the SPY on here. I think that's probably because Bitcoin kind of is doing what it typically does in regards to its own cycle, being the halving cycle. If that makes sense. And it's kind of got some of its own fundamentals that are driving it also. But if you look at the correlation here, Bitcoin's been going down whilst the S&P has been going up. So they've only looked at the past 6 months, not things more broadly. And there's a lot more of a correlation there. And what they're saying, essentially, it's very interesting that this came out, given what's taking place today. We don't want to go too far down whatever rabbit hole that may lead us into. But what they essentially highlight here is they look at Bitcoin in relation to geopolitical events, major geopolitical events. And what they've got here is the S&P 500, gold, and Bitcoin through major geopolitical events. And this is relevant in regards to what we are currently going through. So we've looked at let's just recap for those of you that are just joining. We started the stream off by looking at the markets generally. So we looked at Bitcoin, we looked at the top 50 cryptocurrencies and the sort of sell-off that they are experiencing. And it kind of seems like a normal day in the cryptocurrency market. Some altcoins getting hit rather volatilely. There's definitely an event behind this. However, it doesn't seem like a black swan event, like a March 2020. It just seems like a negative day. We've looked at why the markets are having such a negative day on the back end of course, Iran declaring a state of war and what's taking place with Israel right now. And we're looking at what to expect post this event, providing that it doesn't lead to complete escalation. And I couldn't comment whether that's going to be the case or not. Not my base case, but what do I know? I'm just a crypto commentator. So I've always said, if you don't know, don't comment. So we'll reserve any comments in regards to a full-blown escalation. We don't think that's good for anybody. I wouldn't say anybody, I'm sure there is somebody, but let's move on. So what BlackRock we're looking at here is they're putting forward the case that Bitcoin is a risk-off asset in regards to how well it does in and around geopolitical events. And you can see this is the US-Iran escalation back on January the 3rd, 2020. You can see 10 days after the event, the S&P put in returns of 2% positive, gold was flat at 0, and Bitcoin was up 12%. A 60-day return, so the S&P down 7%, gold up 6%, and Bitcoin up 20%. The breakout that took place in March 2020, where they locked everybody down, 10 days after, the markets were down 20%, the S&P, 9% gold, and 25% Bitcoin. 60 days after, the S&P was up 2%, gold was up 3%, and Bitcoin was up 21%. So that's another geopolitical event where Bitcoin has recovered rather well on geopolitical events. If we look at the 2020 US election challenges, interesting how they're calling them challenges. We've got the S&P 10 days up 7%, gold minus 1%, and BTC up 19%. Then the 60-day return is the SPY up 12%, gold down 1%, and Bitcoin up a whopping 131%. The Russia invasion of Ukraine, we've got the 10-day return for the SPY is 1%, 10-day return for gold is 2%, and Bitcoin down 6%. 60-day return, SPY up 3%, gold up 9%, and Bitcoin up 15%. US regional banking crisis. We have the SPY down 12%, gold up 10%, Bitcoin up 25%, because that's what it was made to do, right? Then the 6-day return is the SPY up 4%, gold up 11%, Bitcoin up 32%. And then the yen carry trade. So we've got the 10 days, not the 60-day returns, although Bitcoin, I don't think it's up. It will be up from that in regards to the 60-day return. I think it's probably going to do quite well. But we've also got this escalation, which is a geopolitical event. And what this is leading us to believe is that Bitcoin actually does well on the back end of geopolitical events. So should that mean that you should buy the dip? Well, altcoins still largely follow BTC. And we've got to see how the dust settles. Today, ladies and gentlemen, it is the 1st of October. It is a great time to become a Patreon. I actually bought more of our crypto mining stock. We have one mining stock out there that we're very zealous about doing exceptionally well. It's at a huge discounted price. And I'll be looking to buy more crypto on the back end of this because ultimately our macro view on the markets remains intact despite all of this. And this report is leading us to believe that Bitcoin actually does quite well on the back end of geopolitical events, certainly better than the rest of the markets. Let's talk a little bit about some markets that are also moving positively today, like crude oil. So crude oil spiking. You've got the likes of Lockheed Martin obviously doing well. And you've got the dollar. The dollar, we still have a downside trajectory for the dollar, which we ultimately think is going to see risk do rather well. But the dollar's seeing a little bit of strength today. And it's interesting that the dollar was seeing strength before this kind of news broke, even though there wasn't any kind of events in regards to macroeconomic data that took place. And this was very interesting, very jittery, very volatile, this kind of break over here. So I wonder, ultimately, we still think our broader direction for the dollar is intact. That's going to be fundamentally driven by interest rates, lower interest rates, more money creation. Remember, Bitcoin is and that's really what's going to drive global liquidity in all these cycles that we look at. Remember, Bitcoin is the most correlated, certainly according to that report that Lynn Alden did in regards to global liquidity. Let's take a look now at BTC and give you our general sort of market take on the back end of all of this. And let's start off on a bigger time frame. And let's really assess the damage, not just from a Cointelegraph point of view, but also this kind of a point of view. Bitcoin's still intact. We've got a number of technical patterns that give us confidence in regards to its direction to the upside. We had a smaller pattern, which we're going to come on to first before we look at the broader patterns, that ultimately is very much still intact. It's always good to zoom out and take a look back at where you've came from and say, look, have you engulfed that? Are we now putting in new lows? No, we're not. We're still progressing to the upside. We're still right on schedule for an epic bull market. October very much still can commence and continue. We've just got off to not such a great start. And actually, is this, given what we've just looked at from the BlackRock report, the very fuel that October needs? Potentially, I think October, November is still going to be a great time for the market. And I can gauge that not just from how this pattern looks in regards to Bitcoin, how the pattern on the SPY looks. And we were calling this pre-break. We've got higher targets for the SPY. Take a look at the US 100. Look at this guy. Despite the news, the markets actually don't look too bad whatsoever, which is interesting, isn't it? And actually, the US markets still haven't closed. You've got the likes of Google up today, Meta up today. Heard something about Mark Zuckerberg, very rich guy now. Has always been a rich guy, but even richer on the back end of all this. This is a clear breakout. The stock market looks brilliant. Remember, we've given you Amazon. We've given technical targets for Amazon that we think are still to get met. Amazon doesn't look too bad at all. And of course, Tesla, very close to breaking this neckline and triggering a pattern that takes you to $505. And then there's potentially a broader pattern in there that might take you to 710. But we'll deal with 505 first. So despite this sort of price action, we still think there's higher prices coming for the markets. And we think this is ultimately going to get shaken off. We don't think there's going to be that de-escalation or escalation. We think there is going to be de-escalation, just like we saw last time. It's very interesting, isn't it, how I can look at the market and say they still look like they want to go up across multiple markets. Is that going to happen on the back end of all-out escalation for the current situation that's taking place? My answer is no. Can the markets predict what's going to come next for geopolitical events? I would say probably better than 99% of individuals out there. We'll see. We'll see. Like I say, we're not a geopolitical presenter, what we are as a technical analyst. But when we look at Bitcoin, we looked at that smaller pattern. Lots of technical confluence still very much at play here. This is what you do when you take a high. It's very common, not always, but it's very common. We've showed you lots of examples of this. You put a toe above it and then you consolidate in a descending manner before you see that continuation. In very much a cup and handle-esque pattern. We've got this inverse head and shoulders here taking us to 150. We've got a bull flag taking us to 130. Inverse head and shoulders taking us to 309. Total 3, which is everything excluding Bitcoin and Ethereum, did very much break out. Is this just a retest? When you break out of resistance, you often come back and get it as support, whether that's our phase 1 base into phase 2, market mastery course still 80% off on. Whether that's anything in regards to resistance that is very clear, you then break it as support and find it as support. Is this just a retest? And remember, we've got that bull flag for the total 3, which is taking us to $1 trillion. We're also looking at total cryptocurrency market cap. This is a better bull flag taking you to 4.1. You can see total cryptocurrency market. Very much still expecting all of this to play out, ladies and gentlemen. We've not looked at ETPs. Let's take a look at Sol quickly. Sol's one of the stronger altcoins out there. I mean, this still looks great in the sort of macro scheme of things. We actually gave a BNB price prediction yesterday. $2,675 likely on this one. The market's still looking great standing, guys. They really, really do. Gold recently made that target that we had for it. We were giving back here, having a bit of a rest there. Let's take a quick look at ETPs. So crypto exchange traded products. These point in the same direction as Bitcoin and many others. Bitwise, 21 shares. Let's take a quick look at MicroStrategy. This looks good. It's going to break out. You know, I'm still very much zealous on October taking place, ladies and gents. And a lot of people don't keep an eye on small cap stocks because they can be a great barometer for risk generally. If they're going to be going up, it's generally going to be a good risk environment. We've given you loads of them, or we've looked at loads of them previously. Robinhood was one we were calling basing. This has progressed significantly. Spotify is just one of the stronger ones. We were looking at this obviously down here. There's lots of small cap stocks that look absolutely fantastic, and like continuation is on the horizon. This is not such a good one. Again, Bitcoin is really just here. Toe above, pull back, continuation. HubSpot. You know, look at some of these stocks. Cloudflare, we're looking at targets for. Roblox was a recent one that I was looking at in regards to potential breakout coming soon. Planetaire Technologies. Lots of stocks look really good. New York Times, etc., etc. Anyway, we're rambling on now, guys. So to recap on everything that we've spoken about thus far, we've looked at the top 50 cryptocurrencies and how badly they've been affected by what's currently taking place. We've looked at what's currently affecting the markets in regards to Iran and Israel. We've looked at a report from BlackRock that essentially shows that Bitcoin typically does well post, better than all assets out there, post a geopolitical event like the one that we've just seen. And we took a general look through the markets more broadly. And we still think that October, I'm going to have to get my Lederhosen out, is very much still on the cards, ladies and gentlemen. And actually, if we could throw our hat in the ring in regards to escalation of the current conflict, we think it's more unlikely based on the direction of the markets or the way the markets are positioned than likely. Seeing lots of bullish signs on the smaller timeframes that all confirm the broader timeframes. And we still very much believe that October is on the cards, ladies and gentlemen. So what I want to do now is dive over to some questions that you guys have. I'm just going to go ahead and bring my tablet up and we shall get into some questions. 850 of you here, ladies and gentlemen. Hopium indeed. You need it. October, Rectober. Today is not over yet, dude. There's always a massive... I don't know whether it's because people want people want escalation. People want chaos and panic. I don't know whether people just don't have enough going on in their own lives, so they want things to happen to other people's. I don't know if that's what the call for escalation is all about. I want de-escalation. We don't want escalation. Let's dive into some questions. I'm going to go ahead and pull my tablet up and we're going to get into some of your questions. Keep them coming. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to answer as many as possible. This is the last dip. Mid-October, up we go. I actually think it's going to be even sooner than that. Once we get, there's always this kind of scare. Markets are the biggest drama queens that there are, period. There's always this scare when it comes to the markets. And people always fear for the worst. And this is why being a technical analyst is of the utmost importance, ladies and gentlemen, because it gives you some solid ground to put your foot upon. If you can say, okay, we're in an uptrend, we've got technical patterns to the upside, the news that hits you, you'll have the armor of being a technical analyst on, and you'll be able to deflect whatever gets thrown your way, like what we're seeing today. So I honestly think that you're going to come out of this strong. And ultimately, this could be the very thing that sees October take place. Sometimes the markets need that deleveraging in order to go the opposite way. HBAR still $2 in your opinion. Now we have given our technical target or a technical roadmap for Hedera Hashgraph. So it needs to go and find a neckline and set up that continuation structure that could give us that $2 price prediction. So do I think it's achievable that Hedera Hashgraph could get to $2? Now, remember, we're not a financial advisor. We could be 100% wrong and it could go to zero. We don't think that's a likely outcome, but it always could. And you need to be mindful of that and make your own decision when it comes to the cryptocurrency space. But Hedera Hashgraph, I think, stands a damn good chance of getting to $2, in my opinion. And certainly I'm positioned accordingly. It's my largest holding. We did a video today where we looked at BitGo's involvement with Hedera. That's just one amazing partnership of many that most altcoins would only dream of having in regards to partnerships. You'd never, they'd never shut up about it, whereas Hedera literally has hundreds of these at this point. XRP going back up. Yep, XRP looks fantastic. I'll tell you what, I've got an XRP video that I was going to release today. However, we've postponed it given the market action. We'll release it tomorrow when it could be literally back at where it was when it started selling off. This is how crypto rolls. But XRP still looks great. On the smaller time frames, the video that we released was looking at this pattern here that you broke out of at this point here. In fact, if we look at this, people are coming and buying this up. You're just finding this as support. And we were expecting a pullback when you came up here, actually rocket off of this. And if this pattern is to play out, this is going to give you around about 90 cents price prediction. In the short term, remember, this is a triggered pattern. Now, if you can get to there, that's not very far off what's likely to trigger a broader pattern that we looked at that takes you to $19.27. Don't worry, we do address the, fears out there in regards to XRP actually being able to get to $1 trillion market cap. Why is that not likely, or why is that impossible? If it does what it's set out to do, you don't think $1 trillion XRP market cap is achievable, given that market cap is just a derivative from price. So it's secondary. Even though there's $1 trillion in something, there's never really $1 trillion in something, because if you started to sell it, it would diminish. And Bitcoin got to $1 trillion. Ethereum got to, what's Ethereum today? 300,000? We did speak in our last live stream about actually how Ethereum may get knocked off that number 2 spot, or certainly number 1 spot in terms of a smart contract layer 1. Let's get back to some more of your questions. So XRP doing rather well. I think this could be one of the bull markets where XRP just does unbelievably fantastic and kind of proves everybody wrong. I'm rooting for you guys. The XRP community, my first time buying XRP. We've got receipts to prove all this was back in 2018-19. Then we gave up on it. We moved on to things like Chainlink, which was a coin that did unbelievably well for me. Many other coins out there back in the last bull market. And then ultimately now we're sort of getting back into it, given the technical significance of the pattern that it's in. I truly believe you're going to see spectacular things out of XRP. I'm not just saying it. We don't get paid to shill it or anything like that. We don't talk about it all the time, even though we could, and we'd get a lot more viewers on the back end of it. We can do an XRP video and it can get 80, 90,000 viewers, which blows most of the content creators out the water. We choose not to cover it daily and sort of milk that because we only talk about it when we think there's reason to. But ultimately, we do think there's reason to talk about it because we think it's going to do very well. And the pattern that we're looking at is a reliable one. I don't think most people know what that pattern is. Of course, go and follow the market sniper and the crypto sniper. He's done a lot more work on it in regards to the pattern itself. And of course, as a student of his, we know what we're looking at. Let's talk, or let's dive into some more questions. This just feels like a average Tuesday in the crypto sphere. It does indeed, doesn't it? So there's always news. There's always fear. I honestly think this, guys, and I might be being really harsh here, and I'm probably guilty of it myself, right? Because we're all hypocrites. I think when there's news like this, people always want it to be like, way worse than it is, so that they have something to talk about and something to kind of keep them entertained. And it's sad that, isn't it, in a sort of ADHD-driven world. But I truly feel like, okay, yeah, let's not, by the way, whoa, let's take a step back here. Let's not undermine or diminish the loss of innocent human life as being a nothing short of tragic thing. Horrific, sad, everything. But in regards to it as a geopolitical event, people throw around the word World War III. Is it that? I don't think so. And I don't think the markets think so either. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. Like I say, I'm not a geopolitical commentator. Ignore the noise. We're on track for an explosive next 6 months. We are indeed. And I'm assuming you are from Australia. Shout out to the Aussies in the chat. A lot of family over in Australia. Awesome info, bro. I appreciate the sensible advice. Appreciate you. Can you do price analysis prediction of render? Bitwise just flipped for XRP ETF. Or flipped. Wow, fantastic. I think they were one of the first for the Solana ETF. I did not see that news. So if somebody can send, well, maybe let's not get links flying about, by the way. If the crew can try and find some news on Twitter and send that to me, we'll pull that up. And somebody before that actually asked for a render price prediction. Now, we don't have a render price prediction. We did do a video yesterday where we spoke about 5 altcoins that were all showing falling wedges, like many of them are. And of course, render was one of those altcoins. So I think render is going to do very well. Again, remember to pull the render chart up, this is in a clear uptrend. It's not been invalidated yet. This is your phase 1 into phase 2. Remember, 80% off the market mastery, guys. Go and get it. You want to be ahead of your peers, get in the Patreon and start taking some of the courses. It's very common. We looked at this with Bitcoin. We looked at this with Vanex Semiconductors, that you put a toe above and then you consolidate in this sort of descending fashion. If we look at the likes of, let's pull Microsoft up. So SPY is kind of an example. You put a toe above it and you consolidate, but a very short example. Let's pull Microsoft up. Because Microsoft's a good example. This is what render's future has ahead of it. You put a toe above your high and you consolidate, even in the same fashion. This was very much falling wedge-esque in fashion. I've done a lot of work on this. Could maybe even pull this chart up after, because I think Microsoft's likely going to continue to do quite well. A US government-backed project, but you can see you put a toe above, you come back and you consolidate before you see that continuation. And the beautiful thing about render and what it's doing right now is this is a falling wedge if ever I've seen one. And has this pullback affected it? I don't think it has. Although I'm saying that, not having looked at the chart. Let's look at the chart. This is a beautiful falling wedge. Textbook in every manner. 3 impulses to it. 1, 2, 3. Basing, breakout. This pullback, okay, yeah. It's not the prettiest, but remember, render is an altcoin. But it's nothing in the grand scheme of things. This is going to set it up for that continuation. So render, I don't actually have a price prediction for, unfortunately, mate. However, I think it's going to do very well. We are massive in the deep in sector. We've got 1 deep in play, which today will literally, given this pullback, if you bought it today, I think my target would give it to around about 100x. Not a guarantee, just something I think might take place. Let's dive over to some more questions, guys. And then we're going to search for the XRP Bitwise news. Okay. Well done, team. So we've got one more question, and then we'll dive into the XRP news, and then we'll maybe dive into some more questions, and then we'll love and leave you. Nobody has many questions on the conflict. Like I said, I don't really know that much about it, guys. I'm just going on what I've read on social media. That's all I can go on. I'm not on the ground there. I don't know, insiders in there. And I would say that I'm not going on mainstream news outlets, although we did look at CNBC and others, and we're going on Twitter largely, which is the best and the worst place for information, certainly when it comes to finance. It's got some amazing info in there. It's also got some horrific information in there, some just downright bad takes. So many people sleeping on ICP, in my opinion. I also believe so. ICP trying to do something very different. They're not going after DeFi or finance necessarily, although it's an element of what they're doing. They're going after literally being that next enabler of the internet for it to evolve and be able to do things in an immutable fashion through leveraging their canisters and smart contracts. That's huge. You eradicate the fraud market, the IT stack in many regards. You replace so many middlemen, and that's what this smart contract thing really is all about. ICP is doing that for all the middlemen essentially on the internet, which is trillions and trillions of dollars in terms of value that they generate. I think it's going to do well, quite likely, as a result of it. Let's take a look at the Ripple news. This just broke. Thank you, team, for sharing this with me. Breaking: Bitwise files for an XRP ETF. Wow. There we have it, guys. We'll be talking about this tomorrow. Maybe I should have released that XRP train is leaving the station video today on the back end of this. We'll see where the markets are tomorrow. We'll see how things escalate. Things can always escalate overnight. We need to see a de-escalation of things. We did see Iran fire missiles and then sort of retract on it, and it's very much sort of, back and forth, and we'll see. I personally believe we're not going to see an escalation of all of this, and that's because of what I can do, which is analyze the market and say they're going up. And if there was an escalation of all this, they wouldn't be going up on the back end of, some sort of an escalation. So what I want to do now, we'll take a couple more questions, guys, before I love and leave you. There might not be any more. If there's not, we'll wrap things up. I'll just go ahead and dive over to the tablet. We'll take a few more questions if there are any. No. I'll tell you what, actually, we'll go over to the streaming site. XLM is interesting. I wonder why you think that. This ain't a crash. Wait till the 90% fall. I wonder why you think the markets are going to fall 90%. Come on. 99% of cryptos will go to zero. I think a lot will, but whether... what's your reasoning for thinking that? And what ones are you referring to? Everything outside of Bitcoin? That would be my guess. Bring on the Ducks. Hey, from Texas. Hello, Texas. The Ducks are coming. We shall be quacking. I am certainly positioned in that manner. So let's hope that takes place. Any more questions? Thank you very much, Star Helix. Very much appreciated. What about Cardano's price target? I don't have one. We did say that we were going to essentially look for what it sets up on its way up. So we need to really see if we can get some sort of a technical target. I made the mistake, I've said this previously, of trying to predict where Cardano's price would go. And we gave that prediction in this sort of 7-8 cents range. We said it could go to around about $5 to $8 is what we thought, $5 to $7. It got to 3, did nearly 100x for me. It didn't get to 5 to 7, and I regret making that price prediction because I still get stick for it now, and that was just based on market cap. It didn't quite get there. Well spotted, Dean. Dot is really struggling. What are your thoughts? Not a duck. I fundamentally really like Dot. Really, I'm a big fan of Polkadot. I'm a big fan of the players in it. I'm a big fan of its ecosystem. I think it could perform similar to something like ADA, and we've already said that ADA isn't going to be one of the best performers in this bull market. Just my opinion, whether it pops up later on. And with these blockchains, it only takes one killer application, one killer use for the tables really to turn. But we'll see that in the charts more than likely. And we're not seeing it for ADA or DOT. They're very kind of weak, if you will. Ignore Warren Buffett, by the way. One of the greatest investors of all time for sure, but really all he's done is essentially buy and hold and pick the right ones. He's been very good at picking stocks. He's a safe investor. He gave that great analogy in regards to when to hit a ball and that he only hits it in the sweet spot. There was a baseballer out there. I can't remember who it was, Beirut, somebody like that, who essentially would only ever swing when the ball was in this kind of square of his vision, because he knew he could hit it and he'd only ever take those shots. He wouldn't take any of them if they were slightly off. And that's Warren Buffett's kind of investment thesis. It's a great thesis. But Warren Buffett has had similar cash reserves, larger cash reserves in terms of percentage of his overall portfolio back in 2018 than he had today. There's been times where Warren has more cash in regards to cash reserves, and he hasn't been right on a crash of those periods. The markets have actually gone higher. So ignore what Warren Buffett's doing. Just listen to me. Just trust me. And everything will be okay. Did you guys hear about the guy who... Wow, great. Thank goodness we didn't read that out. We were going to get, by the way, we were thinking about this as an idea, and let me know what you think, and we might come up with a way to do it. We are going to get sort of... People have questions, they can record or they can come on live. But you could imagine what may come on the back end of that. We could end up with the channel no longer being here on the back end of that. Hardware wallets, Ledger, still my favorite wallet, even with what they've currently had taking place. The only other one I've really played around with is Keystone. I know they sent me a wallet that I played around with. So shout out to them. Andrew, we shall make you a believer by hopefully this time next year. Canada banning crypto. I don't think so. Not heard anything about that. Although Communist Canada, I wouldn't put it against them. Although, what can I really say now in the UK? I've got no leg to stand on here. They've taken my leg away from me to give it to somebody else. They've shortened me, basically, to give it to somebody who's shorter than me in the name of equality. So that we're both equally short. Okay. 31st of December. Yep. Will Polygon do good? Do you know, I want to cover this one because we looked at yesterday, we looked at Atom. Somebody asked about Atom, and I just said it doesn't look great, does it? And remember, Atom is the token of Cosmos Hub. So it's got nothing to do with its entire ecosystem and its success. We've seen so many Cosmos projects just do insanely well. This is Atom's chart. Wah, wah, wah. One of the weakest charts out there. We also looked at some of the Hex ecosystem. That's also quite a weak chart, but it's done quite well recently. Again, it's symptomatic of a risk-on environment, I think, because everything kind of does well, but this is weak. I mean, this is really bad. You know, this just hasn't based yet. I know there's a lot of Atom fans out there. We're a big fan of Cito. We think he's the guy to follow when it comes to Cosmos-related news. Great guy as well. Very genuine guy. But the one that you asked about was Polygon. Have they had I think they've had their token changed. Let's just pull this one up. Just worried I might have some draws on here. And let's use the crypto chart. Could just be a big double bottom. You know, Binance did a similar thing. This is at support. I wouldn't short this here, and I wouldn't sell it here if it was me that was holding it. I wouldn't sell it this low. Certainly, I'd see how support acts and if it does act as that. So Polygon, again, kind of weak, but, you know, lots of cryptos down here. Something like Filecoin, similar situation. Falling wedge for Filecoin also. You know, I still think October shall happen. I think this could be a final kind of flush of it. Let's see if there's any more questions. In history, has a 50 basis point cut not led to a sharp decline before a climb up? Not really. You know, I think the context of why they're cutting is important. Are they cutting because 2008's financial crisis just kicked off and all the mortgage-backed securities have started to blow up? Are they cutting because World War III? Are they cutting because the dot-com and telecom communication bubble has kicked off? They're cutting because inflation's where it should be. You know, Eurozone inflation came out at 1.9 today. There's no cause for concern. You know, this is something that I really want to stress, that it's not. I don't see any reason to be concerned with them cutting interest rates. I think the context is very, very important. Just like with unemployment upticking. Well, why is unemployment upticking? Are people taking into account immigration? You know, the individual that came up with that Sharm index, which has had an amazing track record, literally came out and said, we think this is invalidated. It's not going to happen this time. Also, are people taking into account with unemployment and the employment data, which is very sensitive to locking down an entire economy? Interesting things coming out of Fauci earlier. Starmer is a silly sausage. Yep, his hostage sausages were a great one as well. So distracted there. Polygon could just do something BNB. It's been weak thus far. Doesn't mean it's not going to continue. I don't know. Do I see a role for layer twos? Do we need layer twos in a world where other blockchains are just fast? Don't know. Maybe you do if you want to use Ethereum, but do you generally? I don't think I own any layer twos. Personally, just like I don't really own. Do I? I don't really own any DEXs. I don't own any DEXs at all. DEXs aren't my thing either. I don't own any DeFi projects really generally. I'm not as bullish on it, just like I'm not as bullish on layer twos than I am layer ones that can actually do what layer twos kind of remove the need for layer twos maybe. But maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. War is the best excuse to move money in the shadows. Crypto will rise. Yep, this is all great game, guys. You know, it truly is. None dare call it a conspiracy. Go and check that book out on Amazon. Great book. It will tell you who's behind all of this. The Federal Reserve Act talks about the Federal Reserve Act, talks about all of that. Let's keep these questions coming, guys. We'll try and keep this going for an hour, and then we'll love and leave you all. So we're going to read that comment, but in regards to your emotions, keep them in check. What are you going to do? You know, the market's gone down. What can you do about that? Absolutely nothing. And this is why we stress the importance of having a broader plan, having that bigger plan, even being a part of a community. We're not just the only crypto community out there. We happen to think we're the better one, but there's loads out there. Get with like-minded individuals, have a plan, learn to read the charts. And when we can read the charts, that gives us ground to put our foot upon, so that when events like this happen, we'll know when the SHIT is really hitting the fan. We don't think that's happening right now. And in fact, you know, we think we're still very positive on everything based on being a technical analyst. Feeling down about the markets, it's not going to help you out. It's going to make your situation worse. It's going to make your partner's situation worse. It's going to make everybody's situation worse. Get on with it. ARB is going places. Yeah, I'm not. Layer twos, I'm not really so sure on layer twos anymore. I don't think we need them. Okay, interesting. It's always interests me when people talk about 48K target. Firstly, I'm not sure why you have that target. And secondly, why do you think Bitcoin is going to 48K? What, when you look at the chart, makes you think Bitcoin is going to 48K? And the common response, you've not even responded yet, but the common response that we get is, oh, well, you know, this is going to happen, or there's going to be a major crash or a black swan or a demand destructive event. What's making you think that's going to be the case? You could say that for the next 10 years, and then when there is one, go, I told you so. But in that 10 years, people have made life-changing money, wife-changing money in, and let's not make that joke. You know, let's move on. So I'm not sure it's a good time to short, but do whatever you got to do. Your thoughts on Aerodrome? I've not really looked into that. I've heard a number of other YouTubers talking about it. Something I've not personally looked into. Be a duck, not a chicken. Absolutely. You've got no choice but to get on with it. And when you're faced with that, you either do one of two things: get on with it or you don't. What does layer 2 mean? It just means basically a layer on. So layer 1 blockchain, Ethereum, block. People are everyone's putting everything through that block. It's not really that scalable. So people build a layer on top of it, layer 2, layer 1, layer 2. It will basically take pressure off the layer 1, and they'll do that via sharding or roll-ups or things like this. So they'll basically be able to process more transactions. At the heart of it, there are other uses for layer 2s like privacy. Secret Network were doing that. Manta were doing that. There's loads out there. I love this space, guys, and I love being here. Take a look. Okay. Yeah, not really sure about those two small calls. Be careful with pre-sales because they can go right. They can also go very wrong, and you don't want to be holding something that goes wrong. You know, I get invited to lots of sort of seed rounds in regards to new tokens and things like this. I always steer clear of them. I don't know the game. There's also and I've seen this behind the scenes, not honest nature in regards to how a lot of influencers will get into certain projects that are small, pump them, and then just walk away once the actual token's gone live to the audience. We're not a part of that here at Allincrypto. You know, we ultimately everything's on the table with us, guys. So Flux is a deep in project, very legit. Yeah, I hold Flux, to be totally honest and transparent. A lot of pre-scales are scams. Some aren't, but it's like everything. You know, the bad give the good, and there's more of the good such a bad name. But there's some that done great. And I think the one I took part in was Alice on Binance ages ago, but I don't hold it now. Last call for questions, guys, and then we're going to wrap things up. Hang in there. Do not fear. Allincrypto is here, guys. We've got a great time ahead of us. Let's wrap the live stream up there. Guys, thank you very much for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure. 850 of you in here on various platforms, YouTube, Twitter, and of course, Twitch. I'm going to love and leave you on that note, guys. Absolutely my pleasure. Don't panic. We shall see you in tomorrow's Daily Market Update. Have a wonderful night, guys.